built. I have all my templates built out. So in fact, if I go into these days again, you see, I've got templates. All right. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to pretend I'm going to go in and I'm going to what I usually do is I like to go in and I like to show appointments. I like to go into a day and show their appointments there, but it takes a while to make them individually. So I'm going to move appointments from the last time I did a demo to today. All right. Or if I'm setting it up last night, I'll do it tomorrow. Usually don't want to set this up 5 minutes before your demo, as you can see. Um, by the way, if I go here and do a select date, it gives me the default is today. I actually have appointments earlier. I think I did them on the 28th. I do. I just remembered that I had it out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of these appointments. I'm going to right click and I'm going to select all for reschedule. I'm going to make it a provider cancel because I don't want the garbage to show up in my inquiry screens when I look at this stuff. And those won't show because it normally suppresses those. And then I'm going to go to today, where I have my blank. I go into my first slot, which is 9 o'clock. I go into it, right click. I'll pull one of the appointments. I usually try to keep the same times. I'll go in my next one, 9:15. I go into my next one, 9:30. The other thing that I think is neat here, which I hadn't thought about, is I had those peoples as registered and arrived. I think by moving them, it sets them back just to booked as far as your status, because I'm not seeing the orange colors or the red colors. I don't know what happens with the charge tickets. Remember we talked about that yesterday? I'm actually going to make this one at 10. On my previous one, I had 2 at 10, which I'm going to do that because I like to show what happens if you have 2 appointments in the same slot. See, I had 2 of them on my previous day. Go down 10:30, 11 o'clock. I'll pick that one. My 10:45. That's up to you as to where you want to put these. I always just put them under the same provider because when I like to have a filled screen when I look at my appointments in the EMR. But you could, move them around. I've moved it several times. One way to do it is go in and if you can't remember what day, find a patient that you use a lot, like Helen Anderson. If I bring up Helen Anderson and I bring her up in my, you remember this appointment information screen? I can take a day and I can go to this appointment, right click, and I can click View Day. And that will take me to the appointment for that day. And usually I'll hit it on 2 or 3. If it's Helen Anderson, I use all the time, or Candace Smith. Okay? All right. So I move the appointments. There's one other really important step on the practice management side, and that is, interestingly enough, today is the first day of February. In the billing system, we have this concept of revenue period. So I'm going to go into my revenue period file maintenance, and I must open. See, January is open, but February, I don't know if you can read this. It's got the beginning and end dates for February, but it's not open. So if I have a procedure that's dated today and I try to post it, it's going to be pretty embarrassing because it's going to say your revenue period's not open. Okay. Now, let me go back to 2007. I just want to see something here. Okay, December is closed. We have the ability, I think Debbie told you this, we have the ability in the system, this is a really neat feature, to have 2 revenue periods open at once because we have practices that they're still working on January's data, but they also now need to post February stuff. So the system has the ability to have two revenue periods open at once. With me? So I'm going to go back to 2008. And in fact, if I take January and close it, it'll automatically open in February. Now, if January's closed and I have January transactions, if it's closed, it's going to go into the February revenue period. So some practices will never will run them too open, and some of them they do. I don't care anything. I'll just post a new month. It doesn't mean that much. But you have to remember on your demo, you got to make sure the revenue period that you're in. So on the 30th or 31st, before you go to bed at night, you should have a nightmare. Have I opened my revenue period for next month? Do I have a demo? It's painful if you're in it. I mean, you can get around it, but it's painful. All right. I believe that's most of the setup on the PM side. Oh, the other thing is that if I happen to know that I've got OBGYN diagnoses and procedures in my company file because I've got lots of different ones. But if you're dealing with like I've got a demo on Monday with a radiology clinic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go on one of my customer sites, or I'm going to just go into my master file and make sure I pull down some radiology types of diagnoses and procedures so I have those to post with. Okay, it's always more meaningful if I'm giving a demo to an OBGYN practice and the only procedures and diagnoses I have in are orthopedic, you'll lose them. Even though we all know that someone should have a brain and understand that it doesn't really matter, they would have their services. I probably don't need to tell you guys this, but if I'm dealing with a specialty that I'm not sure whether I have CPT codes or diagnoses, I'll go into billing, file maintenance, and first of all I'll go into diagnosis file maintenance. I'll go in and I'll do a lookup by pregnancy. I'm going to use the wildcard, which is the percent sign, type in PREG, and do a search. You see, I have one. Okay. If I want more, I'll go to my master table view only, do a search on pregnancy, PREG, and we've got all these different ones out here. I probably should have typed in more, but if you want to add a diagnosis, all you do is you highlight it, you click add, and that then pulls it down from the master table listing into my company database. We use the term company. You probably don't want to tell practices that we call them a company. They don't. That's kind of a dirty name. You'll notice here, by the way, we can make these sex specific. So in this case, it would be a female. Most males don't have a vulva. Okay. And if the practice wants to call this something else, like they don't call it this, they can actually name it so that when they're running in their system, it can be, it can be what they call it. But it still relates back to the master and the valid ICD-9 code and all that. All right. So I might do that, and then I might also go into my procedure table. Go into procedure